Welcome back to AM Northwest. From the Philadelphia row house to the Portland bungalow, our next guest documented the innovative and sometimes problematic history behind some of the most iconic housing styles that helped shape our cities. We welcome the author of A Paradise of Small Houses, Max Podemski. Good to have you with us, Max.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. First of all, though, let's talk about your history in Portland because you know Portland very well.
Yeah.
Your grandmother, right? Let's start with your grandmother.
Yeah, so my grandparents are from Poland. They were actually Holocaust survivors and went through Ellis Island and arrived in Portland in the early 1950s.
And didn't they build their own house in Northeast Portland?
Yeah, so when they first arrived, they settled right near PSU in South Portland, which was an old Jewish and Italian neighborhood, and sort of moved up Belmont Avenue. And then in the 60s, they built their own duplex.
This is it right here.
Yeah, that's it. Right off Belmont on 42nd Street in Southeast Portland.
Wow. So is that kind of the house that got you thinking about housing and because you're an urban planner, right?
Yeah,
Transportation planner.
It was sort of a discovery as part of this book. I mean, really what I was trying to do is we have this notion of the United States as being this land of single family homes.
Yes.
But we have this incredibly rich tradition of urban housing in this country, going back to the row house in Philadelphia,
right,
and the three-decker in Boston, the shotgun in New Orleans. And these buildings, they not only create these beloved neighborhoods that people love to get today, but they were really also a ladder into the middle class, especially for immigrants and working class people. And that's sort of exactly what my grandparents did. They built a duplex in Southeast Portland. And so they lived in one unit, they rented out the other.
Smart.
And that sort of helped them, ascend into the middle class.
Right.
And, yeah.
Don't you think, though, we have this idea, I know I do, that the bigger the house, the more wealth you have, or the higher status you have, right?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of,
We attach a lot to our house.
Exactly. I mean, and houses really express social values.
Right.
And that's sort of also been, a dynamic that we see throughout this country where there's been this idea that the only proper way to live is a single family home on a large lot.
Right.
But in the book, I'm trying to show that there's, lots of different ways we can configure our housing. And, we can make, very livable spaces where a family can live that has open space, that has air and light, and also creates communities that people love, that are walkable, that have a great, social life where your neighbors, and the street sort of becomes a community gathering place. One
of my favorite houses, used to live in a Portland bungalow.
Yeah.
And that has a rich tradition in our Portland neighborhoods. Tell me about your thoughts on the Portland bungalow and then how you see it today.
Yeah. So the book is really arranged chronologically.
Yeah.
And so one of the chapters is on Portland and the Portland bungalow. And the bungalow really defines Portland as sort of this new 20th century city. If we're looking at a place like Philadelphia or New York, you have these very dense walking cities where people are crammed together. But Portland really, grew into a large city in the early 20th century and was really defined by a bungalow on a 50 by 100 square foot lot.
Yeah.
And that really sort of defines most of the fabric in the city today.
Well, right now, too, we have skinny houses going in between basically traditional Portland houses.
Yeah. So yeah, that's sort of the big trend of, taking these larger lots and reconfiguring them to have different styles of housing.
Yeah.
So, skinny houses. There's also bungalow courts, which we see a lot, where you have smaller houses sort of configured around a central courtyard, and then 2 and 3 and 4 plexes where you have units stacked on top of each other. And that's one of the other things I'm trying to point out in this book is, we think of high density as like big brick apartment buildings or big towers, but you can actually have, a high density building in a form where you could walk past it and it could look exactly like a single family home. It can have sort of that lower scale and open space.
How do you think how can we solve the problem of the expense of housing? I mean, housing is too expensive now for the average person to own a home. Young people today can't afford a home.
Yeah, it's a huge crisis in Portland and around the country. What's
the solution?
Well, I think the solution is really to look to our past, and that, at one point in this country, we were able to build housing for working class people that was right in the center of the city, that was close to jobs, and we've essentially made these houses illegal to build. In a lot of cities, including Portland, you know, most of the land you can only build one house on a 50 by 100 square foot lot. And one of the main points I'm making is, you know, we can allow different configurations of denser housing, and instead of having big developers build it, we can have, you know, families build it, like my grandparents.
Like your grandparents.
And that's really a solution, you know, to our housing crisis.
Yeah, that's fascinating. You have a book event, and that's tonight at Powell's, so we're going to make sure that everyone knows it. You have a book event at 7 p.m. at Powell's on West Burnside. We'll have all the details for you on our website at k2.com. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Yeah, your book is really interesting, so thank you. All right, we'll be right back with more AM Northwest. Don't go away.